Okay, here we are. It's June 18th. It's Tuesday. Oh my God. And Jimmy's been so distracted with things that I haven't been on the air for a few days. My apologies for that. But I'm alive and well. Feel good. The equipment is in good shape. And here I am in living color. Yes, the side view. Yeah. Alive and kicking. And boy, there's all kinds of stuff going on in the news. We'll add. So let's shrink that down and look. I guess let's just do this. So this was a headline that was in this flip chart application that I have, which I think it's called Flipboard. And you can see over in this little corner. You look at my finger pointing over there. It says flip, so you can flip, but I can't flip it. This is a print screen of Flipboard. If I go to Flipboard, it's right here. It's this apple. That's right there. So this is Flipboard. We'll go that arrow, one over there. So now you can see this will change every 5 seconds or so, and then issue another California beaches nation. That's not a good thing. White House won't rule out commuting Hunter Biden's sentence. So he said he wouldn't pardon him, but he would commute the sentence, depending on what the sentence is. So he was found guilty on all 3 counts of the prior case, which was the gun 4473. Can you imagine? 4,473. And there's a check mark that says, I'm not using, any drugs. And of course he was. And his former wife testified that he was. And another family member said he was. And see, major parts of Florida under major flood warning. Parts of Sarasota hit hard by flooding. You can see these pictures floating up here. Anyway, so let's get back to this right here. And we can flip through. 500,000 immigrants could eventually get U.S. citizenship under Biden's plan. How nice that would be, huh? Politics is really terrible. And then, of course, you have this AI. AI has now infiltrated the media's watchful eye. I mean, AI is everywhere. AI has been everywhere. I mean, there's all kinds of AI stuff floating around. I mean, I've got 3 basic systems going on with this Simulcast, which, as you know, simultaneously broadcasts between Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Twitter Live, or W Live. But we were talking about AI, so I have a soundboard here that is a very complex system that is basically controlled. The user, does controls to turn up the music, turn down the music. Let's see. I can add sound effects and so forth. Try to stay out of the sound effects business. That's the crowd. I just opened and shut the door, because there's a bunch of people hanging outside the door here. Just kidding. Anyway, but AI controls all these things. Now, there may be user input, to start, there's some crickets for you. Yeah, okay, that's enough crickets. I have a few, sound effects. Not many, but a few. I can keep that tab open. I can turn the volume up and down, but all that gets mixed in, to this Rodecaster Pro multi-track signal that then goes into my computer system here through a little wire that's right over here on the side. See this cable right here that I'm tapping my finger on. That controls the soundboard, and that all gets mixed in and goes into this MacBook Pro, which then processes, that into the audio system, which then goes out to the 3 broadcast, simulcast social networks. And then I have another system that comes in through this wire right here that I'm touching. Let me look. No, pardon me. It's this one over here. So this business with the my photo album. Basically, there's my photo album, and I can page through and see which one I want to talk about. Like here, Panera Bread likely paid ransom money back in March because of a cyber attack. That hit their whole system, their computer system, and it came through someone's application that had like photos, and the cyber people attached, a little applet email, which bypassed some parts of the server's cyber security. Here's another letter. This is a letter that was written to all employees. We want to make you aware that on June 13th, we will be mailing out notification letters regarding a recent security incident. That all your names and social security numbers have been attacked. But we have found the attacker, and we're negotiating with them right now. And if we do X, Y, and Z, and they get money, they'll give us a... So what the cyber people did is they got into the server and basically put they attacked all the files regarding personal information, and they encrypted all those files with a cybersecurity device, so that if they were to send a signal into Panera Bread's server, it would transfer all the files and wipe out all the files. So, and then the cybersecurity guys would publish all this private information. And if they paid them X number of dollars, which I don't know how much they paid them, but we did find out that they did pay them something, then the cybersecurity people would give them the undo signal, so that none of their files would be encrypted anymore. So they decrypted all the files once they got this money, and promised to delete all the files that they stole. And that's the background of that headline. And it was so drastic that the senior vice president and chief people officer, a CPO, I've never heard of it's usually a chief information officer, the head of personnel, but a chief people officer. That's what Panera Bread is, or had, or whatever. So that's all I can report on that. But and apparently Panera Bread in March paid a cyber attacker a ransom demand, and they wrote him a big check of some amount. Here's information that 500,000 immigrants could eventually get U.S. citizenship under a new plan from Biden. Now, of course, all this, now, is the plan going through Congress, or is the plan going to go through an executive order? That is the question. We don't know that yet. There's all these plans are being rumbled around in Washington, and nothing's being decided, at this point, because there's a debate coming up, and of course, the opposition, which would be Trump, would then highlight, what Biden's about to do. He's probably going to highlight it anyway, but I don't think Biden wants to make a move on that topic until at least after the first debate, depending on his overall performance. And there's been enough pictures in the news where Biden seems to get frozen in time. He freezes up if he's allowed to. If he becomes disconnected from whatever's going on. At least a couple of newsreels. Now, maybe, they'll give him some kind of a medication to keep him alert. That's, Trump says, I want a drug test before the debate. Both of us do drug tests. We don't want any one of us being all drugged up. We want this to be the natural beauty. Anyway. So here's a little news. Fisker. Oops. There we go. California-based Fisker Inc. on Monday filed for bankruptcy, joining a long list of EV makers that bit the dust, including Arrival SA and Lordstrom Motors. What happened? Well, they had more liabilities than assets, apparently. Companies go out of business. Now, I'm speaking not from the article, I'm just speaking from my own knowledge of things. But businesses go out of business because they run out of cash. It's not because they don't have assets. They could have actually assets more than liabilities, which would give them a positive net worth, but they have no cash. And apparently, Fisker was unable to sell some assets. If they had like stocks and bonds and, could they, and, or if they had securities, could they, hawk them, get loans against them, which is subject to some government regulation. I don't think you can hawk your securities for more than 50% of their value because of the fluctuation in the stock market. You want to make sure any loans based on securities can be liquidated to pay off the loan in case it gets real close. The asset is way up here. and the liability, the loan, is way down here. But then because of the stock market going down, I'm making up a scenario, where it gets real close, so it's like even. Well, before it gets even, the loan wants to make sure that there's enough margin, stock margin, so that he can pay the interest. And if it encroaches even closer, then the loan self-liquidates. And then, of course, the cash goes away. So, there's demand on that, and that would force a bankruptcy. Well, apparently, Fisker ran out of, they probably did all that already, as far as borrowing against assets that they had, like receivables or lease financing, if they lease some vehicles to prospective buyers, owners. Well, once you run out of cash, that's when you have to file for bankruptcy to get protection from the creditors. And that's usually, when that happens, not many companies come out of bankruptcy, just a small percentage. So when you get in bankruptcy, then it's pretty much, it goes to liquidation and the company gets dissolved. Now, some company could come around, and, because, the Fisker is a car. They've made, in this report somewhere, there's another page. They made 10,000 cars. But they only sold 5,000, actually 4,900 and something. So they have 5,000 cars that have been manufactured that are sitting on lots somewhere, unsold, and just sitting there on a huge parking lots, because they made 10. And they also only sold 10,000, and they only sold 5,000. So there's 5,000 that have been unsold. So those cars are somewhere. Those are assets. So, but apparently they couldn't, sell those cars even, at some kind of an auction price to raise cash so that the company would survive. Now, it'll probably come to be where those cars will be liquidated to pay off the liabilities, and it would happen in some kind of a bankruptcy auction of some kind. Taking a sip of my morning K-Cups coffee, which is a wonderful machine that makes me, Marilyn, doesn't drink coffee during the week. She drinks iced tea. But on the weekends, Saturday morning, she gets her cup of Bustelo K-Cup coffee. It is absolutely spectacular. Just changing stuff. But anyway, so you got a lot of Fisker cars laying around on parking lots, which could provide a significant amount of cash to pay off their liabilities. And anyway, so there is, a factory, I guess in California, where they made these 10,000 Fisker automobiles. If you see them, they're attractive. They were considered a, direct competition against Tesla. But Tesla, I think they made like 1,000,001 cars in 2023, whereas Fisker made 10,000 and sold only 5,000 of them. But Tesla, made and delivered. I think the delivery was, 1,100,000 cars, in their factories in several locations, including Germany. The USA has 2 locations, so that's 3. Is there another one? China. So you got China, Germany, Fremont, California, and Austin, Texas. We just got a new Model Y, in March 18th. Tesla made us a deal. Says, hey, why don't you turn in your car 2 months early? We'll pay the 2 months lease on the old Model Y, and we'll give you a new Model Y. How about that? So we did. We took that offer and got ourselves a 2024 a new Model Y that was manufactured, in the first days of March, and we took delivery March 18. Maybe it was the last week in February, but anyway. And I tell you what, oh God, now if you look at the exterior of the Model Y, the 2024, and you compare what it looked like in 2021, which was the first Model Y that we acquired by lease. Actually, we didn't acquire it. The lease gives you exclusive use of the car, and then you turn it in. We had no ability to pay off the lease and retain the car. I think in the last 90 days of the lease, you could, make that request. They won't honor that request early. They wouldn't allow. There's a provision in the lease that says you turn in the car. Period. Now, I found out from one of their spokespeople that in the last 90 days, like 88, 87, 86, you can't call them on day 91. You got to wait until it gets into the 90-day period. You can make a request, and they'll tell you if they'll waive that prohibition in the lease and allow you to acquire the car, and then they'll throw out a price, and then you accept it or turn the car in. Anyway, they made us this offer instead, which we took. But what I was saying is that even though the cars look almost identical exterior-wise, internally they look almost identical interior-wise, but the ride, oh my, what a difference in the smoothness of the ride. I mean, the first Model Y, seemed a little bouncy, and, just riding down the parking garage and going through the ramps, because we have to go up to the third level for our parking spot. Well, when you're ready to go somewhere, then you got to circle down 3 levels to get out of the parking garage. Well, just riding over those ramps, I said, Marilyn, I really like this car and all the technology, but, just riding down the ramps, this car is a little more bumpy than we had with, our Toyota Corolla. I think that was the last car. We had Hondas and Toyota Corolla. The Honda Accord or the Toyota Corolla, which are basically equal priced kind of vehicles in the, $35,000, $36,000 sticker price. And we lease it for, $450 a month or something like that. Now the lease on the Model Y is like $565 a month, and then you add sales tax to that. But we're saving like $150 a month in gas, because we have a plug in the garage to fill up the battery. As a matter of fact, Marilyn filled up the battery today or last night. She was able to plug in. I can dial up the car right here, and we can see. She's got 200. I can show you that. We can go right here to this, and here's the Tesla app. which you can see up on the top, is 200. You see over here, I can't do an expanded, but you see where my finger's pointing, and then you can look on the right side of your screen. Up in that right there, it says 254 miles of range in the battery. So they give you range because the state of charge. I wonder if I can touch that. Yeah, see, it's 85% state of charge. Let's go full screen on this so you can get there you go, bigger view. See, it's 85. Now, if I touch that, it's 254 miles, which is 85%. So it was charged to 90% or 89%, overnight, which takes. Now, when Marilyn plugged in last night at 5 o'clock, the battery was like at 36%. You don't drive into a gas station on an empty tank. I mean, I've done it occasionally, but that's not generally what you want to do because you can never tell how far away you're going to be from a gas station. Now, gas stations, they're, 50,000 gas stations all over the country, at least. And they're like 25,000. There's about 25,000 electric charging spots, across the country. And Tesla has assembled a network of some 15,000 or 18,000 what they call supercharger stations, which you plug in and the battery fills up real quick. When I plug in, to the socket that we have, at the parking garage here, which is a unique, special arrangement that we have with the building management. A neighbor of mine up here on the 8th floor, I call him Dr. Brian. First name is Brian. And he paid the building owner $2,000 to have an electric outlet put in so he could charge his Model S. So, the good doctor plugs in and he can plug in and overnight he can charge his battery and you don't have to worry about superchargers because he, commutes back and forth to his office. He'll go up in West Palm and chat, have tea with his mother. Apparently his mother lives up in West Palm somewhere. And, he may take a road trip over, Fort Myers or whatever. But he has the plug, next to his, full-time parking spot. He's got a 24-hour, restricted parking spot, as I do, but I'm not next to the outlet. But the parking spot next to, on the other side of the column, is used by one of the commercial tenants on the second floor of our building. So from 8 until 5, that space is reserved for him or her. I think it's a him. I think he's a real estate guy or a lawyer. I've never met him, but when he goes home at night, then that parking spot is open. And then Marilyn will slip in there. So if he's a lawyer or a real estate guy, he leaves the office at 4 o'clock to go have an appointment at 4:30, and then after that appointment, he goes home. Well, that parking spot then becomes vacated. And if Marilyn comes home at 4:45, the bank closes at 4, and they close and they lock up, and and Marilyn gets out of there at 4:45, let's say. She'll be home here at 5 o'clock, slip right in that spot, plug her car in, assuming the good doctor is not there. And he usually, comes home at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. He's, I believe, unmarried. He lives in the apartment by himself, but he does have a girlfriend. But anyway, so he comes home at like 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And if he needs to charge up and we're already plugged in, I said, Dr. Brian, thank you very much for allowing us to use your outlet. But this is your outlet, and just unplug me. Just send me a text and say I'm unplugging you, and then you plug in as you normally would, and you're sending me the text so I can come downstairs and coil up my cable and put it in the trunk of the car so no one steals the cable. The cable is actually secured in the car, in my car. The plug that's in the side of the car, and then the wire goes in, you plug it into the outlet. But unless unless the driver of the car that has, his iPhone with him or his Apple Watch, you can't get the wire out of the side of the car unless you unlock the car. And you unlock the car by approaching the car with your phone, because your phone is your key. Very complicated. But unless, a person that unlocks the car is there, you can't get the wire out of the side of the car. So if they're going to steal the cable, they would have to cut the wire. Unplug it from the wall socket, which is 230 volts, 30 amps, which is enough to electrocute somebody. So they would, if they were going to steal the wire, they could only steal part of the wire or most of the wire, because they wouldn't be able to get the socket out of the car. So they'd have to unplug the wire from the wall, from the column, and then fall over to the side of the car and then cut the wire, right close to the socket that goes in the car, and steal that, $250 cable. And the socket would be still left inside of the car, because I could only get that out if I had my key with me, Oh, jeez. So, I would rather not test. There are people that drive around in the garage looking for things to steal. Now, most people that drive around looking for stuff are not likely to steal a wire that connects into the side of a wall, because what the hell are they going to do with it? So, they're looking for bikes, motorcycles, or they might have a device they got from China that'll unlock a car and they'll steal a car. I actually had a car stolen out of my garage, and someone electronically duplicated the key and stole the car. I get up one morning, I go for the car, it's gone. Car's gone. Oh, jeez. Wow. I actually have a little device. Now, the Tesla, is always connected to the network. Because right here, we can see, you can see me moving. This is actually an app that is connected to my car, because it's telling me I got 254 miles of range. I can go up here. The internal temperature of the car, you see right there, climate, is 97 degrees inside, because the car, it's 10:45 a.m. and the sun's hitting the car. Marilyn got there at, like 8:45. And so, 8, 9, so 2 hours, that car's been sitting in the sun, and I have, I can come down here. See, cabin overheat protection is on, and it'll activate when the car gets around 100 degrees. The car will start to ventilate itself, and if necessary, turn on the air conditioner to keep the car, at or below 100 degrees. Now, I have a choice: 90 degrees, 95 degrees, or 100 degrees. Well, since Marilyn's in the, like today, I don't think she has any outside appointments. Wednesdays and Fridays she does for sure. Lunch appointments with a couple of organizations that, but she could, travel and meet up with a customer call or something like that. So we have the overheat protection on, so the car, when she opens up the car door, it's not 150-degree air hitting her and 150-degree seats and 150-degree steering wheel. I mean, I've gotten in a car, where the steering wheel's so goddamn hot, pardon the expression. You can hardly touch the steering wheel, because of the sun hitting the steering wheel. But with the cabin overheat protection, you see, I can see right here from this application, you can see right above the number 68, you can see exterior temperature is 88, but the interior temperature is 97. And that's because the cabin overheat protection is on, and it will prevent the car from getting over 100 degrees. So we're at 97. And it will stay there because the car will either ventilate itself or the air conditioner will go on every once in a while to keep the cabin temperature from not exceeding 100. Now, remember, since it's an electric car, the compressor has its own motor. It's not like, with a gasoline car. Let's add me back. There we go. Now I'm over here. So, the air conditioner, in a gasoline car is, there's a big belt that goes around. You got the engine, so the belt goes around the circular grooved, drive. And then the belt goes down to the alternator, which is the device that charges the battery. And then the belt comes around down here to the wheel where the compressor is, and then goes by a tensioning element, and then goes back up to the engine that's rotating. So in order to run the air conditioner in a gasoline car, you got to start the motor. The 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder, 4-cylinder, 2, 3, 400 horsepower motor, which is, designed to run the car, backwards and forwards, mostly forwards. And it runs the alternator and run the air conditioner. So in a gasoline car, to run the air conditioner, you got to start the motor. And of course, you don't have cabin overheat protection in a gasoline operated car because you're not going to have the whole, a 6 or 8 cylinder motor running just to generate the compression for the compressor to operate the air conditioner. But in an electric car, there's no motor that has to get started. All the electric components are unique, and I can turn on the compressor, or the system can turn on the compressor, and the rest of the motor stuff that drives the car, isn't running. You don't need to run the whole car to run the air conditioner in an electric car. Because the thermostat here that's in the car will automatically start the compressor and the fans to circulate the air and so forth. And the motors that drive the wheels aren't on at all. So it's efficient. Now it uses electric from the battery, but the battery is a really, really big battery that has a lot of kilowatts. Now this overheat protection, if you look at the range, is 254 miles. You can see up there on the left side of your screen. Now, because of the overheat protection, when Marilyn gets into the car, at the end of the day, that range will reduce to, let's say, 249 miles. It may use up, 4 or 5 miles worth of range to control that cabin heat protection. So, which is 1%, 2% of the battery. Let's say 2% of the battery. So it's, it's not a big deal. So I'd rather lose 5 miles of range and not have the car get to 150 degrees every day. And at the end, so we have to basically refill the battery. When the battery gets to like 20%, which is 50 or 60 miles of range. So we've got 200 miles of range what I would call real range, because you don't want to get under, 15 or 20% of the range of the battery. Now, I had one emergency situation where I ran the battery down to 5 miles, and it was scary as hell, because if it gets down to 0, are you going to push this thing? I don't think so. And someone can't give you a bucket of electricity, so you can't walk to the gas station, with a gallon jug and come back with a gallon jug full of electricity. You can do that with gasoline, but you can't do it with electricity. So anyway, with electric cars, you try to make sure you don't get under 10% range, which is like 30 miles, because this battery is, I think our range is like 303 miles. I have an app for that. See if I can find it. I can find it by, let's go back here, and we'll hit S-T-A-T. There it is right there. Stats. Now, this application is logging onto the battery. There we go. See, 85 miles of range. And they're saying the rated range is 254 miles. But really, you only got to get 234 miles of real range. And I don't know the formula on how that's determined, but that's what the Stats app is telling us with this graphic. Our driving efficiency is 92%, and the effective miles per gallon, if you were to do there's a formula that compares, this battery that we have in the car, the Tesla battery, which is an 80 kilowatt battery. And with our driving, with a 92% efficiency and 234 miles of estimated range, we're getting 124. You see the 124 over here on this chart. That 124 that's the estimated miles per gallon if this was a gas vehicle. And if you do the conversion, I think it's like 25.4 miles per gallon for the average gasoline car today, according to the EPA, and do the conversion to try to figure out, okay, with our driving habits and, using that 25.4 miles per gallon average, and we compare, how much energy it takes to move our vehicle, which is 271 watts. Can you believe it? 271 watts per mile. Watt hours. That's a WH with a /MI. 271 watt hours per mile. So if you had a 271 hour light bulb, that's that amount of energy to run that light bulb for an hour is the equivalent of us driving 1 mile in our car. To give you like a comparison with, the watt hours in the battery and the watt hours for a light bulb, a bright light bulb today is, like 100 watts. So if you had 3 100-watt light bulbs, that's almost 200. That's a little more than 271 watts. But you could run those 3 100-watt light bulbs, for an hour, and that's the equivalent of how much energy it takes to push our car with our driving efficiency of 92%. That's how much energy it would take to move our car 1 mile on the roads. I can see the pressures of the tires in all 4 tires. You can see it's 40, 40, 40, and 39. They want the tires, between 40 and 42 psi. When all 4 tires, are like 36 psi, I'll go downstairs and fill them all back up to 42. These are specially engineered tires for the Tesla. You couldn't put these tires on a gasoline car. They're designed for, the Tesla system of brakes and all this stuff. But they run at 40 pounds per psi. They're modern wide tires, high-speed tires. They're 150 mile per hour rated tires, which of course we never get to. But the car can go 136 miles an hour, according to the EPA. But if we go 80 miles an hour, that would be big. Anyway, the tires are special tires, and they need to be inflated. Like American cars, they run the tires like 32 psi. But these Tesla tires, they're 42 psi. I can see where the car is, on a map. You see this darkened car? This is Marilyn's car in the parking lot at the where she works, which is kind of amazing. There we go. Let's see, it's 11 o'clock. Yeah, she's at the parking lot. There you go. There's the car. Can you believe it? Because the car is online all the time now. Only if you have the key to the car can you see this with the app, which we have the key to the car. So now I can go over here and push in the next set of charts if you're interested in how these cars can be tracked. And there you can see our driving efficiency is an average of 97. The other app said it was 96. Yeah, you can expand that, move it over, and you can see, there we go, slide that over. So actually the efficiency is a little over 100, and that's going to push this average up a little bit. So you can see this blue line, it's going up. Here's the average miles driven per day, and it's somewhere between 30 and 50 miles a day that's driven. There you can see the miles driven, 17, 28, 33, 27, 21, 40, and 36. And then we don't have today yet. This is Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So this is Tuesday. So last Tuesday, it drove 33 miles. We haven't finished today yet. So the last time we charged, you can see it goes up to 6 kilowatts. And this is, it was charging from 1,700 hours to 2211, 22. So that's like 10 o'clock. And then it filled up, and whoosh, the charging rate went 10 to 0. Automatically stepped down by the circuitry that's in the Tesla. Here's how this is a chart of the battery health, and we can expand that a little bit. And you can see these little dots, and then there's an average of this line, and we're getting 303 miles, 303 miles, per, fill up, so to speak. There we go. So, according to this, histogram, and the efficiency across all users that have Model Ys, and it's comparing our Model Y with all the other users, we're with a driving efficiency of 92, it's better than 56% of all other Model Y drivers, currently, as of, this date. You can imagine. And our drain rate is, 1.18 miles per hour of drain. And the drain mostly is because of that cabin overheat protection I mentioned earlier. Well, that uses, that drains the battery a little bit. So we lose, a mile per hour. It's not quite that much because it might be a mile per hour for only 6 hours. So anyway, that shows you, and we're better than 3% of you. So we have, we live down here in South Florida, and we use that cabin overheat protection. Most people, new drivers of electric cars, don't use that feature because they have range anxiety and they're afraid of losing miles. But since we plug in our apartment building almost whenever we need it, or there's a supercharger, within a half a mile of where Maryland works. So that's only like 3,000 feet away, and she can plug in for 20 minutes and the battery gets filled right away. And then we get charged, about $15 in electricity, that gets billed to our credit card. But if we can plug in at our apartment building, which 75% of the time we do, then we don't have to pay that $15 electric charge to fill up the car. Now, if you filled up a car, an SUV in a gas station, it costs you $45. Plugging in costs $15. So that's the difference, in filling up, because of the $4 gasoline, it costs you, $45 to fill your car up, with an 18-gallon tank or whatever. Anyway, so there is a distinct advantage in electric car driving because, the electricity cost is 1/3 of the gasoline cost. All right. So here, this is a chart of the firmware that's in the car. And you can see here on this, our firmware version is 2024 8.7. So it's all the way over here. You can see my finger wiggling. It's over on this side of the chart. And the newest firmware is over here. Now, I got notice on the Tesla app that we have a software update that we can download in the car. But Marilyn doesn't know how to do that. Now on Wednesday, she took a day off or something. She got a day off for some reason. So she took Wednesday off and break up the week. There was a reason code, but I kind of forget it. So I'll be able to drive the car because she won't be driving to work. So I may fill up one of my CO2 cylinders also. Anyway, so when I do that, I will download so I can be driving, to, pick up my drugs at the Publix, or I got a couple items that are ready there, and I could take one of the cylinders and get that filled up if I want to take an extra 20 or 30 minute drive. In the meantime, the software will download in the car, and then it'll stay there, and it'll say, when you download the software, you need to be, parked. The car has to be parked, and you won't be able to use the car for about 25 minutes. That's the warning message that pops up. So don't start the software update unless you're willing to not use the car for, 25 minutes. So you can't download you can't install the software while you're driving. It has to be, in park. So you need to be parked somewhere to have it in park, because that means the wheels aren't moving. But I could download the software into the car, and it says there is this download available, and it'll probably be in one of these two columns over here on the right side of the graph, which is 24, 14.9 or or 20.1. It'll be one of those two. Let's see, and I can do this. Oh yeah, it'll probably be the one all the way over on the right side, because this chart tells me where people. So this one is going up, 6.1% per day, and this one's going down, and I'm all the way over here. I'm over here where it says 0.0. So I'm like the last one to, everyone else has already updated their software. Interesting that you can actually know this. Now, as far as charge in the car, see that donut-shaped graph. That shows that. Let's see. Yeah, this shows the percentage of the cars that have full self-driving. So for Model Y cars, as of the average of this day, 31% of the Model Y cars have full self-driving, and 69% don't, which is me, because we're not going to pay $8,000 to have software in a lease car. Because at the end of the lease, I could turn in the car, and then the $8,000 goes away, so to speak. So, but you can go month to month on that for $100 a month if you want full self-driving, which I don't want to spend until I read a lot of reports that the newer versions of the full self-driving are really, really, really good. There are a number of reports that are saying that, but I want to see more reports. And if we're going to take a road trip somewhere, then that full self-driving is really very handy. All right, so we're out of charts. So that's everything that you can learn about the Tesla car. Is there anything beyond that? Nope. That's it. I thought there was one more chart. Okay, so we'll go back to the beginning, and there's a new. Let's hit new. Yep. See, there's a firmware update is available for your car in version 24.14.9. So that is okay. Let's go back here. 24.14.9. So the question is, am I going to get into 24.14.9, or is it going to be 24.21? It's going to be one of these two columns over here on the very right. But people that have 24.9, they're moving to this one. So I may have to go here and then go to that one. I may not be able to go all the way over. It's not a choice that I make. It's a choice that's decided by the computer systems in Fremont, California. But it's like having an iPhone on wheels, the software, and there's all kinds of little jiggles and jaggles to the software. The autopilot will work better. It'll stay in the lanes better. It'll update the mapping software that's in the full self-driving. If I happen to have that button turned on, or just the autopilot itself, which is like a super duper cruise control. Amazing. So that's I'll shut this application down, and I'll shut. So here's, you see, now I'm down to 253 miles of range, because another hour has ticked by, and I told you lose about a mile per hour. And I've been yakking here for 59 minutes and 45 seconds. You see this little timer right over here, 59. That's the number of minutes, seconds, and tenths of a second that I've been yakking away here. And my 1 hour thing is coming up the timer all the way over on this wall. This Gray Lab timer, that's off. And you see, this went to an hour. So that's it. So you've learned a little bit about Teslas. They're really quite remarkable. Not to mention, this iPad is really remarkable. I have I have a brand new iPad here. The long story behind acquiring this, but so this was an older version of the iPad, and they were going to give me like $178 to trade in this iPad to get the new one. Oh, I paid $1,000 for that. I'm not going to turn it in for $173. I'll keep it for what I'm doing now with it. I have it plugged into the computer system, and it works with this Simulcast. So, I wouldn't want to. I don't want to turn it in for. I'd rather have it here. That's $173. That, if I just used it for a picture photo frame, or just to do internet stuff. I can check the weather. Here, let's check the weather. Go here to Weather Pro. This is the weather. And we have a tropical disturbance over here. There's an X, a yellow X, which in weather terminology means there's a 10% chance that this will get cyclone, counterclockwise rotational thing. I can see the air. If you look at that app, closely, I can see the air moving. You got air moving coming this way. You got some air moving that way. So that might get that spinning. Right now, it's not spinning. So you really don't have any cyclone activity, to make it, then this whole shaded area would turn red. This was red a couple of days ago, and now it got reduced to yellow because the cyclonic activity, if we expand this, you really can't see a center of rotation. I can see there's air going all the way around, and there should be a center of rotation right here where that X is, but I don't really see it yet. So, and when it really gets to be cyclonic, where there's an eye, so to speak, the beginning formations of an eye, there's a possibility of it. 20% chance of tropical storm formation. Okay, the one over on the other side of Florida is a 10% chance. Let's slide back over here to this one. And if I touch somewhere around here, you see, 20% chance. So they both have 20% chances of developing a cyclonic rotation, a formation, the early stages of an eye. And if it starts rotating, then it'll generally it intensifies, more and more, and the wind speeds increase, and all this others. You see, there's a lot of moisture that is drawing up into this thing, so this could become, in the next couple of days, an extremely powerful storm. I just lost Twitter after an hour and 3 minutes. Twitter dropped off because of I don't know why. Twitter's the first one to go. Now, the whole broadcast will be available on Twitter, but no more live. So if I talk for another 20 minutes, you can hear all hour and a half of my conversation, but it won't be live. The first hour will be live, and the last 20 minutes will be, or 30 minutes will be, just a reproduction, like seeing, an older movie. It's a one-day-old movie. Anyway, so, the iPad's really quite, I break up the weather, and I can see these storms, and, the winds this way are going 23 miles an hour, and the winds going that way are 22 miles an hour. The amount of information from the satellites, that I can connect into with certain apps that I have on my iPad, amazingly. Here's an app that's linking in. I'm giving away all my private information. My blood sugar right now is at 111. And in the last 3 minutes, it went down 2 clicks. Anywhere on this chart is okay. If it gets over 200, that's too high. If it gets below 60, that's too low. But it'll fluctuate during the day. And you can see this is what yesterday looked like, and this is what today looks like. And it'll hold 2 days worth of information. Now, I have another app that holds, 2 weeks worth of information. Let's see if I have that app handy. I know what the icon looks like. Can I find it fast enough? Because I know. Oh, here it is, right here. Bingo. See, there's 109. The other chart said 111. This one is the most accurate. This is the app that was developed by Abbott Laboratories, who makes the thing that's in the back of my arm up here, that transmits to the app on my iPhone every minute or so. And you can see this graph. I can pull up. Whoops. I don't want that. No, leave that alone. There we go. I'm back to there. Can I see? No, I guess I can't see it from this app. From the, there's charts and so forth that I can see on the Abbott Laboratories. I can see on my iPhone that'll tell me what percentage of the time I'm in range, what percentage of the time am I out of range or too high or too low. And I'm running around 98% in range. Every once in a while I go over a little bit. I hardly ever go under. And it runs right here between 100 and 150. As you can see, this jiggly line, on this chart over here. But, can you imagine? Now, this is going into my iPad. Now, you normally look at that, with your iPhone. But because they have this Libre link up, you see in the very top in the orangey looking color, Libre link up. The thing that I have in my arm that connects with that manufactured by Abbott Laboratories is the Libre Libre number 3. That's, they had version 1, 2, and 3. This is version 3, which is the most, the smallest, and communicates, like every minute to your iPhone or my iPad. This tells you right here in a typical day is 720 signals that get transmitted from my arm to the iPhone, and that connects with an app that makes this chart. And the average, my A1C is averaging 5.3. It makes a calculation, and if the last 24 hours represents, the next 90 days, it would look like a 5.3 on the Richter scale, on the A1C scale. I mean, when I started with everything in the drug regimen that I'm on, I was like 11.4, which is like crazy high. So immediately, the doctor called me in, and we had a mid-year visit. Other than your annual visit, I went in, just because of my A1C, and I agreed to an insulin regimen. Whereas, 30 or 40 minutes before breakfast, lunch, or dinner, I give myself a shot of insulin, which is a no-brainer, and the needles are so thin that you can hardly feel the injection at all. And it puts in a little bit of insulin and, under your skin, into your fatty tissue. They call that subcutaneous. a fancy word, which means an injection that's under the skin. The length of the needle is only like 5 millimeters, which is like a quarter inch. You can't push it in any deeper than that, because the needle is only 5 millimeters long, and it's like it's called 32 gauge, which is the smallest needle that's manufactured today. And there's a hole in the needle, right? Because that would be the flow of the medicine. So I give myself insulin injections, 30, 40 minutes before, your normal breakfast, lunch, dinner, or evening snack. Then you give myself an injection before that. To keep, because you want to keep your blood sugar, under 200, or actually under 150, but definitely under 200. But since I'm taking Ozempic, by some means, keeps my blood sugar, as you can see the wavy line here, from midnight to 11 a.m. And the only really addition to my sugar intake is I put, 2 teaspoons of sugar in my coffee instead of 3 or 4. But the Ozempic, it's designed to control your blood sugar, and it does. Since I've been on Ozempic, I haven't taken any insulin. I haven't needed it. I got insulin in the refrigerator, in an insulin, injection pen. Looks like a pen. I have one right here. Oops, this is a used one. So this is a pen, a fat pen, and you take it off, and you have a cylinder of chemistry in there. Here's a Ozempic one. And then on top of that, it covers a needle, which you can't see, I don't think. Some way this camera can focus on it. You can barely see the needle right there. It's out of focus. Because it's, I guess, too small. If I can get it to focus on this. Ozempic. Maybe the text. No, not quite. But I could see that as I got closer here, and with that black background, you could see the needle. It's the thinnest thing you could possibly see. It's the diameter of 2 human hairs. And you just stick that in and push the button on the top, and it gives you an injection based on how you dial this dial here. And this little twisty thingy. This is empty, so it won't dial. But anyway, the insulin pen works the same way. This is an empty Ozempic one. So I can display it like I'm displaying this. So we're going to pretend this has insulin in it instead of this cylinder of the Ozempic. This is the cylinder. Now in the pen that I have in the refrigerator, I can disconnect this and put a new cylinder in if I ran out of this one. Now these Ozempic pens are designed to give you 1 month's worth of, 4 injections, 1 a week. And then this is empty. This is a glass thing in here. So in the Ozempic system, you give yourself 4 injections, and then this pen is not usable anymore because it's empty. And then with your prescription, you get it refilled, and you get another one of these. The average cost annually, if you analyze the payments with the insurance company, it averages about $150 a month for this. But the advantage is I don't have to spend $75 a month for the insulin because I haven't, in 6 months, I haven't used any insulin. So I save, $75, $80 a month for the insulin cost. So this is $150. So really the net cost of this is like $75 a month, which, is not zero, but it controls my blood sugar, and when you're in your high 70s, which I am, I'm crowding that 80. When you're in your high 70s, without giving up my birth, but you can look it up. It's my birthday and everything is all a matter of public record. You can go look at my resume that's filed with FAU because I've been teaching there for 20 years. So it's it's on my the copy of the resume that I supplied to FAU is online on my website, which I've had 26 million visitors to that website. Really, 26 million, can you imagine? And if any of them, you could actually go see my resume if you got on the website to look at, football or softball or swimming pictures. I got 50,000, literally 50,000 FAU football pictures that I or Marilyn and I took over a 20-year period. Yeah, so that's kind of crazy. But anyway, so so you able to see my blood sugar right here. It's running around 107. And you can see it has a little red dotted line down there showing me where it's going to go if, I don't have lunch. It'll get down about 80, 78 to 82, something like that, But this Ozempic is amazing. It really manages your blood sugar. And it has the ancillary benefit of preventing major cardiac events somehow. I don't know how, but it does. What's my pulse is running around 70, 76 beats. Here's on my watch. I can see a chart of my pulse. I'm running at 76 right now. And it was at 56. It went up to 76 because I've been yakking here for, an hour and 17 minutes. And because I've been talking, and actively thinking and so forth, your pulse goes up. It's just like driving a car. When it's sitting in the driveway, the beats per minute, go down because you don't need that much circulation. But when you you start driving, you're going to use more power. You use more, and you need, your pulse goes up. Yeah. So I'm running at 76 beats per minute right now. And every 5 minutes or so, it surveys my pulse because of the technology that's inside of the Apple Watch. And there's some laser lights that light up underneath the watch and measure on your wrist, on the back end of my wrist, the beats per minute and my pulse. And if there's a irregular heartbeat, it'll give me a warning that you have an irregular heartbeat, which, could be atrial fibrillation or I've never had any signs of atrial fibrillation. But I could, the software that's in the Apple Watch will tell you if you have some irregular heartbeat, which means it's either too high, like if you're sitting on the couch and all of a sudden your heart rate is at 150 beats per minute, there's something weird about that. So, 6 years ago, I had a heart event, a major cardiac event. And I tapped on Marilyn was out on the patio talking to her sister on the phone, I think a Milwaukee sister. And, I packed my bag because I looked at my watch. There's 150 beats per minute. And I'm sitting on the couch watching the news. It's 6 o'clock at night, I think, on a Saturday. So I said, "Holy shit, this is not right." So I put on a blood pressure cup on my arm, and just to check the watch. The watch gave me the warning. And then I put a cuff on my arm, the ones that pump up, and to get a blood pressure reading, and it also reads your pulse. So I looked at that. I said, oh, crap, this is not good. My blood pressure was like at 180. My heart rate is at 150. And, the systolic, diastolic, was like, 180 over 120. No, that's not good. So I did it again. Same thing, within 5 points one way or the other. I think it was 192 over 111. The low number was too high. That needs to be like, like 70, 60 or 70. It was 111. So, oh God. So, so I packed my fast bag. I put an iPad in there. I put a charger in there. I put my iPhone in there, and a couple of wires. And I put my headphones in there, and I tapped on the glass door. I said, Marilyn, we got to go to the hospital right now. I'm having a cardiac event. So she hung up with the phone. She's on the iPhone with the sister. She hung that up. I said, we got to go right now. So, you may be in the hospital a while. So, whatever things you need to be in the hospital for a few hours or longer. I think I'm going to be staying overnight at least. You may go home whenever you feel like it. But since you're a spouse, you can probably stay with me as long as you want to. And she's, I've never been in a hospital before, other than visiting other people that are in a hospital. I've always been a visitor in a hospital. I've never been a patient. Can you imagine? My whole life, I have never been a patient in the hospital. But 6 years ago, I was. And I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks, because I had the very beginnings of a heart attack. And the doctor said, your heart system has put an enzyme in your blood that says you are having a cardiac event. But because you got here so soon, most people, don't realize what's going on, and they don't feel right, and they feel like they're coming down with the flu, and they're really having a heart attack but don't know it. But it gets worse and worse and worse. So you wake up in the morning, and then you all of a sudden fall down to the floor because you're having a heart attack. And I guess sometimes your heart just stops. I didn't have one of those. I had one that starts off with high blood pressure and so forth. And it can get high enough, and then you can have a stroke because your blood vessels pop in your brain. I didn't let that get high enough for that. I got to the hospital quickly enough, and they gave me an IV of, nitroglycerin, to dilate all my blood veins, which will, reduce your blood pressure, rapidly. And heparin. There was a drip of heparin also in the IV setup, which prevents blood clotting, I think. I think it's an anticoagulant kind of thing, because sometimes your blood can clot when the pressures go, basic. So, but the nitroglycerin dilates your blood veins all over your body. So, your blood pressure drops. And the heparin also drops your heart rate, I think. Anyway, but my pulse got under control. So within, 3 hours or so, all these body signs, became normal. But they did an angiogram, the next morning, I believe. Maybe it was Monday morning. So I went in maybe Sunday, and then Monday morning they did an angiogram. Dr. Ordonez. And he said, Jimmy, you've had, you were a very smart fellow, because you got in here really quickly, and you have very, very little heart damage. Just about 3 or 4% of the muscle got damaged down in the very bottom of the heart. Your heart has, this shape. And the very bottom, he said, there's a little part of that heart down there that got damaged. But the rest of the muscle system in the heart is good. But you have some artery situations that are troubling, and you're at least you're going to have quadruple bypass surgery, because I see 4 arteries that have blockage. So, but 2 of them the arteries are so small that I can't, use, I could put 2 stents in, but then you got 2 arteries that are, getting ready to seal off. They're so clogged and atrophied. Anyway, the doctors in Boca Hospital had one technique of fixing me, and then Ordonez says, "No, we don't want to do what they're recommending, because I don't think you'll survive that operation." I said, "Well, let's not do that." What's plan B? He said, I mean, this is really the summation of the conversation I had. And plan B is what? He says, "Well, I'm going to Delray Medical Center, and I'm going to meet with Dr. Brian Bethay." I mean, this is a truthful statement. He said, so Saturday morning, his surgery schedule, he has the surgery early in the morning, Saturday morning. But at 10 o'clock, he's open, and I've made an appointment with him. So I'm going to go up in his office and sit there, with all the pictures I took with the angiogram and the videos. And I'm going to meet with, I have him on a CD-ROM, and I'm going to meet with him and go over this with him and see if he'll agree to do what I think should be done. Because the doctors at the Boca Medical Center want to do something different than what I'm recommending. And I don't think you'll survive that operation. But the operation that I'm going to recommend that Brian Bethay does, you can survive that if Dr. Brian Bethay agrees to try to, do bypasses on these 2 atrophied arteries. And they're so close to the edge of the heart, that's going to be a tricky bypass. And we'll see if Brian Bethay will do it. And he came in, to the hospital that afternoon, and he said, "Jimmy, I got good news." He said, "Dr. Brian Bethay agrees with my surgery recommendation, but we're going to have to transport you from this hospital to that hospital, which is like 9 miles away. Delray Medical Center from the Boca Hospital is, so I live 1 mile away, from the Boca Raton Regional Hospital, but they don't want to, they had a cardiac surgery, and the Boca Hospital would not perform the bypass surgery that my cardiologist says should be done." He said, "So that's unusual, but that's the way it is." But Brian Bethay agrees with what I'm recommending. So we're going to take you to Boca Raton. Now, we can bring him down here, and then he's going to use, the Boca Raton Regional Hospital staff to help me do this surgery. Or we can take you up to Boca Raton, to the Delray Medical Center, and then Brian Bethay will operate with the staff that he's used to operating with up in that medical center. I said, "Well, that's probably the best thing to do, right?" He goes, "That way he's working with everybody that he knows rather than working with everybody that he doesn't know so well." He said, "Exactly. So I recommend that you agree to have me transport you to the Delray Medical Center with so we'll get an ambulance set up for you, and they'll put you in the ambulance, Sunday, and then they'll drive you up to the Delray Medical Center, which is like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride." Now I know why they Velcro you to the gurney that they put in the thing, because the ride was so, oh my God. That was, I said, "Guys, come on, slow down. You're rocking me. I'm going to fall out of this damn thing. Even though I was Velcroed in, I was like, oh my God, I was holding on to the metal bars there. Now, there's a guy, watching all my vital signs in the back where I was. And then there's a guy in front who's driving the ambulance. And I said, will you tell that guy to slow down? I mean, this is like freaking crazy. So he did. And so I actually parked out and said, slow down. I'm yelling at the driver, slow down. Because I'm afraid I'm a heart attack patient. I don't want to, get all excited here while he's rocking and rolling in the ambulance. So when they decide to, do an ambulance thing from one hospital to another, and that's why I didn't know that. I've never been in an ambulance before. So I said, Marilyn, just take me to the hospital. I don't want to sit around here for 20 minutes waiting for an ambulance to show up. Just, you drive and get in the car, and I'll sit in the passenger seat. And it's 1 mile away, so you can drive me. We'll go right up into an emergency. I can get up and walk and get into the, the wheelchair, and we'll go in there, and you just tell them I'm having a heart attack. That's all. And they'll put me in one of the, I got into room 13 in the emergency part of the hospital, and they, Dr. Ordonez saw me, and he's the one that, scheduled the ambulograms, and they did, the blood pressure, this and that, and blah, 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 and ended up with the nitroglycerin and the heparin drip, and, then they checked me in the regular part of the hospital, and moved my bed into the, that movement is a lot different than being in an ambulance because there are not any stop and go lights and bumpy roads. You just take an elevator and they move you from one part of the hospital to the other. Oh, God. Well, I was there for a few days, and then I got, I guess it was almost a week. By the time Ordonez could find a doctor that would do the operation that Ordonez wanted to have done to repair my arteries surrounding the heart. And so I ended up with quadruple bypass surgery. And Brian Bethay was capable of doing all 4 of them. And here I am 6 years later, actually this is June 18th. So I was, on June 6th, 6th, that's when I went into the hospital. No, that's when I actually had the surgery performed in the Delray Medical Center. It was on June 6th at about 7 o'clock at night. I survived that surgery, and I was all, drugged up with whatever they do to help put you to sleep, and the air that you breathe, whether, I don't know if it's ether or some other chemical. I think it's some other chemical. And, they knock you out. But I was in surgery for like 10 hours. Can you imagine? Quadruple bypass surgery. I went in at 7:30 in the morning. I didn't get out till 7 o'clock at night. But that last 2 hours was like when they sew you back up and they, start getting you out of the ether part, and you can open your eyes and look around. Everything else, my fingers were all swollen like sausages, from the reaction to the being, sedated for 10, 11 hours. Whew. Now, you're knocked out, so you don't feel the pain, but you do wake up, and you're like all tired out. And it took me, like a day and a half to basically, be uncomatose. And in the second day or second and a half day, they're getting you out of bed and going. So you go into the bathroom. They get rid of the the hose that's in your urethra. So you pee in the bath, in the toilet like you would normally. But you have to like sit down and pee because you can't stand up and pee because you're too like half dizzy. Because you're still coming out of all the anesthesia from the operation. So if you got, and you're not going to do number 2 because you weren't allowed to eat for a day. So it's only number 1. But they want to get you up moving around a little bit. They don't want you laying in bed for a week like they would have done 50 years ago or something or other. So the modern medicine, they do it. They sew you up, and unless there's some reason where they keep you in ambulatory, they want to get you up moving around as fast as you can. And that's, in my case, it was like day 3, maybe day 2.5. But at day 3, I didn't have, the bag connected to, your urinary, canal and so forth. I stick a pipe up your thing and to get into your, just short of your, your kidneys, or your bladder, I should say. And when your urine just leaks out, all the time when you have that pipe in there. And of course, when you don't, then your body, closes off your urethra, and you only pee when you're ready to pee, in the bathroom. So that was day 3. Whew. God, I get tired thinking of it. That whole hospital experience was like a couple of weeks. 5 or 6 days after the operation and 5 or 6 days before the operation. So maybe it was 12 days. Come to think of it. Whew. Well, we got on that because we were talking about my heart, my blood sugar here, and my pulse. And my pulse is running around 76. Yeah, you can see, I can see a little 76 there. I can see my blood oxygen. There's a little graphic there on my watch showing my blood oxygen. And this runs between 95 and 86. And the average is like 92, which is a little lower than normal, but it's, it's not 88, it's 92. And it goes up to 95 or 96. And it goes down to in the high 80s, which is, not so good. But it's not terrible. So I have a bottle of oxygen laying around under, in the living room. So if it gets real low, I can tell, if my breathing rate will change if my blood oxygen goes really down. So if I sense that, I'll sit down on the, like you run out of breath like you're racing, but you're not racing. And that's the signal that you're really, so if you're like, jogging around, on a track, and you're like, you're breathing a little harder than normal because you're, running around the track, track practice. But if you're sitting on the couch and you're breathing like you just finished a little track event, you can say, my blood oxygen must be down. So I have an oxygen tank with a hose connected to it, and I dial it up to about 5 liters per minute, and I open up the valve on the oxygen tank, and I just breathe in that oxygen. And then my blood oxygen will go up, and my body system will then slow down my breathing rate, and my blood oxygen will go up because I'm breathing, almost pure oxygen. Instead of 20% oxygen, I'm breathing like 80 or 90% oxygen because I have the little mask or a hose, in my nose area. So that when I breathe in, I'm taking in this oxygen. So it's mixing with the air. So I'd say I'm just estimating this, that the level of the oxygen, even though it's 100% coming out of the hose, but since I don't have, a real controlled mask, the ratio of the oxygen as compared and the nitrogen that's normally in the air, I'd say the mix is like 85 or 90% oxygen instead of 20% oxygen. So that's like 3 or 4 times the concentration. And that's what I need to get my blood oxygen level back to normal. And then it gets normal, and then I'm fine. I'm all caught up, and I'm not breathing hard and all that kind of stuff. And then I turn the oxygen off and see if I have recovered from that low blood oxygen behavior. And I can see on this graphic, if I put my glasses on, which, they are on. Oh, God. So let's see. See, I'm running at 90. I'm running at, it's been ranging from 90 to 100, 90% to 100%. It's been as low as 87, and it's averaging 93, and I'm currently at 91. I can see that right on my watch. So this particular configuration, my pulse is at 63, so that's a good sign. My pulse is starting to come back down again. It was higher. It was like 75 or 80, but now it's down to 63 as I'm chatting on here. All right, so I think we're about done for the day. I mean, I didn't cover an awful lot of the news events that I've captured. On my I got through Fisker. I didn't talk about. Here's an interesting situation. A number of the western Texas, you can imagine the state of Texas in your head here. Well, if you just there's a western area of Texas. The wells, that are supposedly capped off, are suddenly erupting with water, and no one knows why. Usually when you have these oil wells, the oil collection areas under the earth, there can be, areas of the aquifer that are moving around under there. Well, in this particular area, let's see if it actually mentions it here. Oh yeah, the right in the very bottom here, you can see the PERMIAN, the Permian Basin, which is one of the nation's top oil-producing fields, the Permian Basin. But in this, there's a number of wells in the western part of that Permian Basin in Texas, western Texas. Water is now coming up around the edges of the oil wells. Gassy, GASSY, gassy water has been gushing up from the ground. So, because where there's oil, there's gas. Meaning gaseous, like, methane, ethane, octane, all those anes, those called aromatic hydrocarbons. So they're coming up with the water, and they're calling it gassy water because they don't know that it's aromatic hydrocarbons, like I just said, because I'm a biochemist by training, and I've learned that, methane, ethane, propane, butane, all those gases are capable of coming up in around oil wells. And it's bubbling up with water, and it's gushing from this graphic. There's water gushing up all around some of these real old wells that were, that's all rusty and so forth, and it's not pumping anymore. This is old and rusty, and it hasn't been pumping for, like maybe decades. And they capped that well off, and basically stopped production, but it's got all this gassy water coming up all around the edges of the well, coming up from underneath, this drilling field. So, and it's happening in multiple locations simultaneously. So there's something going on underneath. Who knows? Maybe there's some earthquakes in the area, which I'll start watching for that. I have an app that not only shows me the weather, but shows me earthquakes. And there are a number of small earthquakes that just happened, in the area of Puerto Rico. No, that hasn't been reported in our national news because there were, I guess, small earthquakes. There wasn't any damage, per se. So that was not reported on our national news. But I saw it on my app. And it'll tell you, the number of Richters on a Richter scale. Is a 3.2 or a 9.8, or no, it wouldn't be that, because that would be drastic. Buildings would be falling down if it got 9, anywhere near 9. So these smaller earthquakes, are in the 3s and 4s, low 4s or 3s or 2s, But that could be enough, that size earthquake could be enough to shake things up underground to cause this water gushing up around the spot of where these wells, particularly these old wells, Anyway, so that's why this clip is out here, because this was the news that I clipped off yesterday, and the story was 3 hours old. So you can see that 3H. and so when I clipped that, it was, and let's see, when did I pull this picture? It was Tuesday. Oh, so it was today at 8 a.m. when I popped this picture. See the 8:05 a.m. So when I clipped that photo, the story was written 3 hours earlier than 8 a.m. So that's like 5 a.m. The story was created by the Inside Climate News Agency, whatever that is. They didn't say agency, but it's Inside Climate News, because it's a news organization. And they wrote this article and put this picture up. And that's another story. Anyway, so that's one of the things I want to talk about today. And here's a story that, with, we have, they're having trouble with their 737. They have like oops, stop talking. My watch is talking to me. With the 737 MAX planes that were manufactured by Boeing. There's a fleet of them out there with various there's several of the airlines that are using the 737 MAX planes. And apparently what this story is about is they have quality control people that float around Boeing. And Boeing, has a big parts department, so to speak. So when they manufacture planes, as they're manufacturing them, the guy who's in charge of building the planes, he'll do an order, almost like a purchase order kind of thing. And that order will then be transmitted by paper or electronically, probably electronically, to the parts department, and they'll start pulling parts out of the parts department and then, deliver them to the guys in charge of manufacturing the plane out on the, in the big hangar where they build the planes. And that's how they build the planes. Every week or every day or every other day, there'll be an order out there into the parts department to, build the next little section of the plane, whether it's wires or, screws, rivets, metal panels, whatever. Well, apparently there are as many as 400 faulty 737 MAX aircraft parts, according to this whistleblower. And they have to get these parts that were not manufactured up to the specifications required by the Boeing engineers that designed, every part and every screw and every rivet. All these parts are built to certain specifications so they can hold things together, with certain stress requirements that were engineered, into the plane. Well, apparently there were 400 parts that were identified by the Boeing people. Like the parts department, they get a box of bolts, and they can see they're not built to the proper specification. Maybe that could be identified visually. They test some of these parts to see if they can withstand the stress that the engineers wanted, certain strength, Anyway, well, the Boeing company, determined that there were 400 faulty parts, that got into the parts department, and the parts department discovered these faulty parts and identified them and isolated them, away from the parts department, so that any other servicing or manufacturing of the 737 MAX aircraft wouldn't use these parts. So they were segregated, and according to the whistleblower, Boeing has, lost. They can't find these parts, and they have meticulous records, but the parts now are missing somehow, or Boeing says they've lost track of the parts. So that's almost an adjective for missing. They've lost track of the parts. That means they may have been reintegrated into the parts department, and the surreptitious thing would be, why would that be? Well, so the Boeing saves a little money, so they don't have to pay, $20,000 or $10,000 or whatever thousands it is, to replace these 400 faulty parts. Now, 400 parts, it could be big parts, little parts, in between parts. There could be a part that's a very sophisticated, piece that's part of the engine. I'm making up stories, but they identified 400 parts, and they're probably not just screws and bolts. They could be all kinds of parts. The plane has lots of parts. It could be a wiring harness where the wire wasn't, didn't have the proper gauge of the wire because of the current that's going through the wire. So if that wiring harness, had some wire in there that was under spec as far as, as number 10 wire, number 12 wire, number 16 gauge wire, you got different wires with different gauges. And if they ask for an 8 gauge wire and it's got a 10 or 12 gauge wire in there, which is thinner, then it wouldn't carry as much current to, whatever that wiring harness is connecting between, what's on one end and what's on the other end. So if you need an 8 gauge wire, which is a real high current wire, that wiring harness better have 8 gauge wire in there for that, that's connecting up to that terminal. And so if it was under spec came in under spec on the gauge of the wire, and then you got to return that whole wiring harness and exchange it for one that's properly built. I mean, that's a possible example. There may not be any wiring harness issues with the 400 faulty parts. And the story doesn't tell you what kind of part it is. But there's 400 parts that are now, they say that, they have lost track of them. They were tracking them, and they had them isolated, and they've been cataloged. And according to the whistleblower, these non-conforming parts that they're supposedly being tracked or disposed of, they can't find them. So that doesn't mean they're not somewhere. They just lost track of them. And they usually, when they have track of them, those parts are isolated and they can't be used. Well, if they've lost their their tracking method for those 400 parts, they could inadvertently get back in the mix and be consumed, by the parts department as they're building out new planes. Well, you don't want to do that if you're putting in a wire that's under spec on the current side. So that's why I have this Boeing story up there. It's pretty careful, that they lost track of this stuff. All right. So I think we're about 2 hours, and I think I better stop because I've gone from 10 to 12, 10 a.m. to now it's noon. And since it's now noon, and I've lost Facebook Live, and I've lost YouTube Live, the only people that are still carrying me live is, good old YouTube Live. I've never had them drop out of all the broadcasts I've done, which is hundreds of them, I think. YouTube is really on the ball. So with that, and it's 1:57. It's lunchtime, for God's sakes. So I think I should say goodbye, and everyone is gonna, So let me finish. So we'll see you hopefully tomorrow.